Hey, Matt from Hidden Machine here to talk about the games that I've been playing over the past month or so. I try to play a lot of different games, and sometimes I want to do a big, long, in-depth kind of analysis of them or a, mini doc on it in some way, but sometimes I just want to say like, hey, this is a really sweet game that I think you should check out, and that's what this video is all about. Now, as always, I want to thank all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you've got even $1 a month, it goes a long way to help this channel grow and continue to do what it does. And if you're in a position to help us grow, check the link down there to hop on the Patreon and see what's up. And also, if you've been playing something cool, you want to tell me about it, hit me up down in the comments or jump in the Hidden Machine Discord. Now, of course, there's a lot of Remedy and Alan Wake talk over there as well, but we do discuss other topics and other games. So try it out, check it out, and in the meantime, I want to talk about some of the games I've been playing lately. The first one up is a game called CULTIC. I've covered this game on the channel before, but recently it received a new free update called CULTIC Interlude, which has a really fun map that acts as a bridge between the first and second episodes of the game. Now, that second episode is still in development, but this new map offers quite a bit in terms of gameplay and lore, and it ends with an awesome boss battle. In my opinion, CULTIC is one of the better shooters to come out in recent years. It definitely has more of an old school boomer shooter look, but there's a very heavy Resident Evil 4 influence here in the gameplay. There's a great mix of horror and action, with plenty of awesome set pieces and environments that all feel pretty distinct. The whole game is being developed by just one person who is handling pretty much every aspect of the game, including all of the art and music. I could go on for a very long time about CULTIC, but it's only $10 on Steam, and if you're at all a fan of FPS games, you should at very least check out the free demo of this game. Last year, I wound up getting pretty deep into games like Vampire Survivors, Slay the Spire, and Bloons Tower Defense 6. I found that Heretic's Fork is a game that scratches a very similar itch as those games do. This is a card-based roguelite tower defense game. It can be a very casual game. I actually found myself running it in the background while doing other tasks on my PC. You play your cards, set up towers, and then waves of enemies will attack your towers. In the game, these enemies are actually souls that are trying to escape hell, and you are managing hell's resources in an attempt to stop more souls from fleeing. There's a whole sort of corporate office satire theme at play here, and I think it works pretty well. The game has a lot of character, and there's a bunch of little bonus things to encounter. Now, most of these little bonus things remind me of stuff like desktop toys for Windows 95, the sort of oddities that seemed really prevalent at the time, like desktop buddies and joke programs. There was a slight resurgence in this sort of software early on in the App Store, like the beer drinking app, but it's something that has definitely become less popular over time. The way that Heretic's Fork leans into this stuff really sets the game apart for me. There's a lot of humor and just heart all over this thing. While the game has been officially released, it's not in early access or anything, there are regular updates and communications with the community of players so the game can kind of become its best version of itself, and I think there's a lot more opportunity for this game to continue to grow. But that said, it's still a really fun game at the moment, and I'd highly recommend it. Thronefall is another tower defense game that I've enjoyed recently. It was co-developed by the developer of Will You Snail, which was covered on our channel a while back by Andrew. I picked up the full version of Thronefall after playing through the demo, and the full game totally delivers. You have a set amount of currency that you can use to erect towers, put up gates and walls, or manifest different types of ground troops. The goal is to protect your castle, which is attacked every night by various types of enemies. Make it through the night, and you'll have earned some currency to put into fortifying your castle for the next round. One thing I really like about Thronefall is that it's not really as passive as some other tower defense games that I've played. You can direct troops in real time, and you have your own attacks and abilities to use. I think the maps are really well designed, and I like that some of them have these little shortcuts that you can utilize. The whole presentation is really tight. It's a game that I found equally relaxing and challenging. The game is still in early access right now, but it's receiving regular updates. I really have faith in these developers to follow through and work with their community to create plenty of great content for the game. Death Elevator is a game that I found out about on Twitter. It's got a visual style clearly inspired by Killer 7, with gameplay that kinda reminds me of Superhot. As soon as a bullet gets near you, time slows down, allowing you to dodge or retaliate accordingly. It's a roguelike game that has you ascending a tower. The visuals and sound work really well together for me, and the combat is pretty tight. There's a variety of different weapons to use, and overall I found the game really fun and just easy to get into. The full game hasn't yet been released, and the demo is no longer available, but if this looks at all interesting to you, I recommend heading over to Steam and wishlisting it. It's gonna be out before too long. Videos from this game started making the rounds online a few months ago, and it's called Holstin. It does some really interesting stuff with perspective changes, going from third to first person and back again. But the game also lets you rotate the third-person camera as you explore. The game doesn't yet have a release date, but there is a pretty substantial demo available right now, which is sort of like an abbreviated and recontextualized vertical slice of what the full game will have to offer. The first part of the demo that I played is called the Janowski House, and according to the menu here, it highlights environmental puzzles, 2XD rendering, and is oozing with atmosphere. From what I've read online, 2XD rendering means that the game is actually 2D, but it has per pixel sorting, real-time shadows, and a rotating camera. It looks really good and is definitely oozing with atmosphere. There is a strong classic survival horror vibe to this demo, and I'm really bad at those classic survival horror games. So while I had a lot of fun with the exploration and puzzle solving part of the demo, I really struggled when I got to the combat section. Now, that's entirely on me. I don't think there's anything wrong with the gameplay or difficulty. I think I just lack the patience required for this sort of thing. I had the same exact problem with games like Elisa, Silent Hill, and the original PlayStation versions of the Resident Evil games. Regardless, this is something that I think a lot of people are going to really appreciate when it eventually releases. American Arcadia is a game set to come out on November 15th of this year, 2023. I recently played the demo, and it made a really big impression on me. The game is rooted in the cinematic platformer genre. It feels, somewhat similar to titles like Flashback or the original Prince of Persia games, but with some significant twists. This is a puzzle-focused game that really takes advantage of some unique mechanics. The basic plot is that you are Trevor, a character on a reality show called American Arcadia. It's kind of a Truman Show type situation, where Trevor's whole life has been part of the show, but he never knew he was being filmed. Through a series of events, Trevor becomes aware of the show and attempts to escape it, being guided by a woman named Angela, who works on the show as a technician. She communicates with Trevor through an earpiece, and you'll switch back and forth between the two characters. She can hack doors, lights, and other equipment for you, which really opens itself up to some interesting puzzles. The demo is pretty brief, but I'm really excited to see what else this game has to offer. Earthbound has been one of my very favorite games ever since I first read about it in Nintendo Power way back in the day. Even just the screenshots alone were enough to let me know that this game was really going to speak to my sense of humor, and I've always loved the visual style. There have been a lot of Earthbound-influenced RPGs that have come out since that time, but to be honest, most of them don't really appeal to me. As much as I love the more whimsical stuff and the themes of friendship, I'm honestly more amused by things like fighting the police, or the cult, or battling the retro new age hippies, and lines like this. There's just a degree of absurdity and cynicism in the way that different aspects of American culture are presented in the game, and I really love it for that. The demo for Knuckle Sandwich is one of the first games I've played in a long time that taps into a similar space for me. It's an RPG, and similar to Undertale, which is another Earthbound-influenced game, it utilizes minigames instead of a traditional turn-based combat system. I really don't want to say too much about this demo because a big part of the appeal to me was all the surprises that it threw at me. But let me just confidently say that if this piques your interest even a little bit, you gotta go play this one right away. 77p Eggwife is probably the most crass and absurd game that I've played since Postal 2. It's a bizarre and sometimes very ugly game that has way more depth than I could have ever expected. In the game, you are 77p Egg, and in an apparent sexual misadventure, your Eggwife has died. So you go on a quest to find yourself a new Eggwife. The game is obviously influenced by the Postal series, so if you're familiar with those games, you have an idea of what you're getting into here. It's an immersive, detailed world that you run around in and piss all over. The game is pretty dense. There is a lot of stuff to find in it, and as long as you enjoy very obscene and juvenile humor, you're gonna have a lot of fun discovering it all. Now, it might look like a first-person shooter, and there is first-person combat, but really it's more of an adventure game. You'll be doing a lot of exploring, solving puzzles, and pooping and farting. The combat is probably one of the weaker aspects of the game for me, but I still had a lot of fun with it. This is a very irreverent game, and it's not for everyone, but I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to have a lot of fun with it. Next up is another demo that I played recently. Tenebris Somnia is an upcoming horror-themed adventure game that incorporates live action footage. The game's director has a background in filmmaking, and he wanted to combine these two ideas. The demo is pretty brief, but the game has a great pixel art presentation that I think contrasts really nicely with the live action stuff. Tenebris Somnia pretty much feels like running through a short horror film. I really can't wait to find out what the full game has in store. Yet another demo here, and another game that I found out about through Twitter. Paperhead has been in development for a while now, and I was immediately intrigued by the look of the game. The graphics reminded me of The Legend of Bumbo, which was co-developed by Edmund McMillan. But while it does have some visual similarities, Paperhead is a very different game. It's a unique mix of puzzles and intense first-person arena combat. You jump on, kick, and shoot at your enemies, but you also have access to a pencil and eraser that you'll use for both combat and puzzle solving. The game has a really novel presentation, and the demo hints at some really intriguing stuff concerning the story and how the narrative might develop in the full game. You can try the demo out for yourself over on itch.io. The Last Exterminator is a game that I've been following for a pretty long time now, and it just recently released a really solid demo. Now, this is a first-person shooter that is clearly heavily influenced by Duke Nukem 3D, and just to be upfront about everything, Duke Nukem 3D is one of my all-time favorite games. The Last Exterminator, in my opinion, really captures the same energy and overall fun factor of Duke 3D. And the whole thing was built on a custom engine designed by a solo developer. I really can't say enough good things about this demo. It delivers for me on pretty much every front, and it's just so much fun. There's a bunch of interactive stuff to find, the combat and level design are just on point, and I'm so excited to see what else is coming down the line from The Last Exterminator. One last demo to mention here, it's for a Vampire Survivors influenced game called Let Them Come, Onslaught. This plays very similar to a lot of other games in that genre, but it does have a unique weight and overall unique feel to the action. Your character in the game is injured and sort of limps along while avoiding enemies. Often, your attacks are more focused, accurate, or more powerful when you're not moving, which leads to some interesting risk-reward balancing. There's also a bunch of physics-based weapons that will sort of like flop around as you move and aim, which again adds a unique element to the gameplay. I put a ton of hours into this demo, and I unlocked everything that it had available. I'm not sure when the full game will be released, but fans of the survivors-like genre should definitely give this demo a shot. Next, I want to give a quick update here. In my last roundup video like this, I featured a demo for Whisker Squadron Survivor, which is basically a roguelite take on Star Fox. Since then, the game has entered early access, I bought into it, and I am super happy with how the game is coming along. It's clear that the devs really love this project, and they just launched a new update that added Twitch integration and a bunch of other new features, and there are plenty more updates on the horizon. Now, this video may have made it obvious, but I like to play a lot of different games, and sometimes I talk to other people who say they wish they could play more new games, but they just have a hard time finding anything that they enjoy playing, and they wind up going back to the same old games over and over, and they kind of feel like they're stuck in a rut that way. Well, I felt that way too, and honestly, I also have a hard time finding new games that I really enjoy. Like, for every game that I want to recommend and talk about in a video like this, there's a dozen more that I try out and they just don't click with me. So just to illustrate that point, here's a bunch of games that I tried out in the last, month or two, and they just really weren't something that I wanted to stick with. We've got Saturnalia, Arthurian Legends, Knuckle Somnia, My Work Is Not Yet Done, Pine Harbor, Three Minutes to 8,
Nothing of interest. A few pairs of socks. I just woke up. I don't want to move it.
Trinity Fusion, Scroomage, XCOM 2, and lastly, Atomic Heart.
May I give you some advice?
I'm kind of busy right now.
Try to avoid the robots more powerful. Destroyed robots contain a neuropolymer resuscitation drug called...
At the risk of sounding like I'm trying to do some sort of PSA, if you are someone who feels like you want to try more new games, but just have a hard time finding good stuff to play that, clicks with your tastes, I'd say that the solution is play more games, and especially play more demos. There's been a really big resurgence of the demo in the last few years, and I love it. There's always tons of awesome games you can try for free on Steam, and most of these demos are less than 30 minutes in length, so it's really not too bad trying to just, download a bunch of them and see what sticks and what doesn't, and you just might find your new favorite game. So that's what I've been playing lately. Now, last night I did start Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm pretty sure I'll be playing a lot of that for quite a while. I sunk about 8 hours in immediately. I didn't even realize where the time went. I'm also still in the middle of my second playthrough of Alan Wake 2, which I'm streaming and then posting the archives of those streams. So on this second playthrough, I'm really going through, taking notes, and trying to really deeply analyze stuff and catch anything I might have missed the first time around in my kind of, rushed playthrough I tried to get through to get the review out on time for the channel. So really looking forward to getting into both of those two games. They're pretty beefy experiences. Baldur's Gate 3 especially seems like I could do upwards of, 80 to 100 hours in that game quickly. But anyway, once more, let me know what you're playing. I'm always looking to find out about new games, and if I showed you something here that you started playing or enjoying it, let me know. I'm curious to see, what do you think of this stuff too? I'd like a little bit of back and forth, a little discussion, all right? I don't want to just talk at people. I like them talking back a little bit, So hit me up. In the meantime, see ya.